147. Hey, this Life in Tech, episode 147. I am Jason.
And I am Dan.
And I'm still TK.
I have to say, for all those that are listening, someone contact PETA because Jason killed off his African poisonous caterpillar. And I'm pretty sure, because I saw on Twitter you finished your 5K or whatever it was, your half marathon, that the only reason you were able to do so is because you sacrificed that poor caterpillar to the caterpillar gods for you to be able to finish that race.
Hey, sometimes sacrifices have to be made to reach goals.
I liked it better with Mario Kart.
The poor caterpillar.
Listen, let me tell you something, man. Don't let anybody bullshit you. 13 miles is far. So, right? Like, I've gotten used to 6, like 10Ks are like not a big deal. And then you realize, dude, I still have over halfway to go. Like, I'm not even half yet. I still got more than half to go. And you're like,
And then depression set in, right? You're like, but that's
at what point did you drink the blood from that caterpillar to keep your energy up so you could keep going?
About mile 10.75.
Poor Louie the caterpillar.
I can't. So now you're on to training for a marathon after you take a little bit of time off, right? I think that's what I read.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll go right to a marathon or if I'll do a 30K, which is like 18 miles or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know what the progression should be yet. See, because the thing that's killing me now is how to schedule the training time. I mean,
yeah,
that took me 2 hours, 45 minutes, which is on the slower side, but I wasn't dead last. And that was my goal because I'd never run that far, right?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to train for a marathon. I mean, it's like that's 26 miles, right? Mm-hmm. So, when are you going to find the time to basically train for 6 hours a day?
Well, it's how you cut it up. So at least the way it was done for this. So keep in mind, this was, you plan for, let's say 3 hours. Because I think that's like the cutoff time typically is 3 hours, right? So you're on the course for 3 hours, they just yank you. You're only running up to 5, maybe 6 miles during the week, 2-3 times, depending on how much you train. And so the idea is that you build up speed over medium distances during the week, right? And then on the weekend, when you have more time, is when you do these long ones. So you're just building up like slow endurance. But man, even 6 miles, I think I could probably bust an hour at this point. I got last week I did my fastest 10K, which is 6.2 miles, and I did it in an hour 3 minutes. So if I had just gone 1 minute faster for the last 3 miles, which I probably could have done, I would have broken an hour. So that's doable. And so you can plug these into these formulas. Cycling was the same way, which is how I know all this stuff exists. You can figure out, okay, I want to go this fast for this long. Here's all the stuff that needs to happen to make that true, right? Like even down to wind speed and direction, how much to drink every 30 minutes, how much to eat every 30 minutes, all that jazz, right? It's all manageable. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Of course, the big part is now it's getting cold, like real cold. So the last 3 miles I did yesterday were like in the freezing rain. That sucked.
Could have been a lot worse.
It could have been snowing.
No, I could have been having to be in the freezing rain.
I think I knew that was coming.
Yeah,
when Dan says something could be worse, it could be that he was having to do it.
But I'll tell you what, man. Once your body's able to take that, like I'm not sore or tired today. I was tired yesterday.
Oh, I bet.
It just becomes a mental challenge, which I enjoy. You just kind of meditate and think about things. And man, I've had, because do an hour, 10K, I've come up with a couple really good research ideas that I think are patentable actually in the last month.
Training or on a race?
Just training, running through the woods. Yeah, yep. Having a quiet time. There's not a lot of people around. What else are you going to do but think? You got to do something to deal with yourself. You know what I mean?
But I think that's like when you start doing endurance stuff. when you break it down, there's two types. Like you got team sports, and then you have individual activities. I think we've discussed this at great length. The team sports are hugely important for kids for a lot of reasons, right? Mostly they learn how to work with a team. They learn how to be look left and look right and see who needs help, that kind of thing. But I also think whether it's running, cycling, swimming, things like that, that especially when you start doing long distance stuff, that you got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and you have to go inside yourself. And I think to be an effective member of a team, you also have to have that internal control mechanism that when you don't want to do it, you still do it. And that battle for yourself during that, I think, is hugely important. So I think that's awesome.
Well, you know what I like about it, man, and I think I always have, I just never realized it, is it's great practice at decision making. And so like around the time that it really started raining hard, I was right by my car because I did this loop around this lake. Okay. And so it's a really simple choice. It's raining. I'm cold. My feet hurt. This sucks. I'm not having fun. So do I just stop it? I think at that point I was at 11 and a half miles. That's pretty far, but it ain't 13.1. Do I just call it and get in my car and warm up? But I only got 2 miles to go, dude. You know what I mean? And so that's like a really simplistic choice that has huge impact on your goal, right? Not in real life. Who really cares? Who really cares? It doesn't really change anything except my own momentum going forward. You know what I mean?
But it
could change something. It could very well change your life. If you give up, you're choosing to give up. Does that start your snowball effect of any other time when it comes close to the end and it's hard and you're tired? Any other time you might choose to give up then too.
Right. No, that's what I mean. What are you practicing? What are you making to see that momentum? That's what I mean. It's like, as opposed to, I'm not an ER surgeon in that moment with somebody's life in my hands. It's not the same ramification in the immediate. It's the long term, right?
Yes. You might be in the future.
Hey, don't think I haven't thought about it.
Okay, so one day we're going to wake up and we're going to see Daniel Ford, DSC, MBA, MD, LLC, and A+. Certified ethical hacker.
You forgot Esquire.
Yeah, well, it's, but what you're talking about is one of the prime goals of Buds, Hell Week in particular, is that concept of, how do you make it through an arduous circumstance? Right. When, like you said, it would have been really easy to go, and I'm peeling off and I'm going to go sit in my car and warm up. Right.
Right.
But what life pattern are you establishing? Right. And what you want to do in any given moment. Right. And
right.
And it's funny because if looking back on it, I think nobody remembers the really bad times. I think in life, we have a good mechanism as humans to say, oh, that really wasn't that bad. But in the moment, it was the worst thing ever. Right. And once you realize that, it's like, hey, I'm going to live in the moment. And then an hour from now, it's not really going to be that bad. And how you manage that over time. And I think that's right. It's like, hey, I've already done 11. I only got 2 more. That's roughly another 20 minutes. Maybe, once you're tired, you're like, that's about, 16 to 20 minutes. So let's just stop whining and, get it done.
Well, and that's
a life skill.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I've learned over time that I personally really enjoy about these types of sports because, like we've talked about with these watches, you can track so much data. Yeah. I can break it down to seconds easily, right? Like, okay, it's going to, like you just said, TK, it's going to take roughly this long. I can do anything for that long. I mean, it ain't that bad. And if it's really that bad, I can just slow down a little bit because I'm just racing myself. What's important isn't how fast I'm going. What's important is that I complete this task, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I think, when you even like you watch kids sports, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got a line, like especially if they're sprinting back and forth type of thing. And I don't stand anywhere but on the line where they have to turn around. Like if they've got to run up to the end of the basketball court and go back, I stand at the line where they have to turn around. And all I watch is the feet of every athlete. And if either you hit the line or you cross it or you're short. Mm-hmm. Right. And, you're short and there's a meme out there and I think it's great. It's like, that's the difference between good and great.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And everybody, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. Everybody has cheated the system at some point in their life. Right. But the system's going to get theirs.
Yeah.
right? And I think
the house does eventually win.
Right. And I think that over time, the sooner you learn that, the better off you are. Right. And people, I would say that I look at myself and I go, hey, I wish I learned that early. I wish I started practicing that earlier in life.
Right.
And whatever it is. Right. And it doesn't have to be these huge mistakes you make or anything like that. It is like being a mindful person and saying, hey, what am I supposed to do? Let's do it this way, because that's the complete correct way. And it's not cheating the system.
I think the concept of mindfulness, even if you remove it from like its Buddhist roots, right?
Right.
It not necessarily being in the present, but this idea of exactly what everybody was just saying. It's not the immediate impact of what I'm doing. It's the momentum that I'm creating in which direction it's going in, right? Is this decision carrying me forward in a positive way or carrying me what essentially is backwards in a negative way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So would you consider drinking the blood of that caterpillar a PED?
Yeah. I mean, I would. Oh, dude, hey.
I'm
do you
getting
remember
ready.
the story? Do you remember that story I told you about when I tried to trick my doctor in California into prescribing me testosterone? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So in case nobody's heard this story, I'll give you the brief summary because this is now going to become an issue again. When I was cycling and I was racing, I decided that it might be in my best interest to start juicing. And I figured the safest way to juice, I'm just being honest. I figured the safest way to juice was to work in concert with my physician. Except I knew because of my age and stuff like that, he wasn't just going to give it to me. And so somehow I had to demonstrate that I was in the low enough or below normal that he would have to give it to me. And so one of the best ways to artificially lower testosterone is to work out like really hard and then go get your blood tested. And so I would cycle like crazy, dude, in my garage and then immediately drive to the doctor's office to get my blood drawn. And he knew what was going on. And he's like, hey, listen, man, did you just work out? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And like the sweat's just pouring off me, dude, because I'm still hot.
It looked like you just got out of the sauna.
Yeah.
It's in California. It's hot outside.
Well, that's what because I rode my bike there too, right? And that's what I told him. I'm like, hey, man, I just cycled over here. It's like 10 miles. I mean, it's kind of hot.
Boston. I had to ride my bike.
Yeah. And so anyway, I basically have 1 week left of classes. Between this week is a half week, and then the following week's a half week, and then 1 week of finals, and I'm done until January. And so over winter break, that's when I stack up like my dentist appointment, my physician's appointment, all that stuff that I can't do during the week because I have classes and stuff, right? And so, dude, how do you get faster running? You juice. So I'm gonna see how these North Carolinian doctors.
I think when you start talking about
get this stuff done.
I think when you start talking about testosterone therapy in particular and any of that type of stuff, here's the question. You go get it what's largely referred to as an AHP or advanced hormone panel, and it comes back and it says, normal testosterone is from, let's say the arbitrary number of maximum is 100. It's not, but just to keep the number so that normal is between 20 and 80. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, if it comes back and it's 21, you're considered normal. If it comes back and it's considered 80, you're considered normal. Right. But it's on a glide slope of, in my case, it's like 21 is considered great for being 55. Right. I don't want that. Right. When you go in there, it's like, hey, I want it to be 35. Right. And when you start looking at athletes and, performance people, and we're not talking about juicing. We're talking about people that, in the military, soft forces and everything like that, the concept of, hey, we're going to start with the testosterone therapy because we want you largely to be able to recover quickly, right? Because that's the big deficit as you get older is how quickly you can recover, right? Mm-hmm. And you're talking about therapeutic doses, not bodybuilder doses, right? And you make that distinction and you're doing it properly, it's the wave of the future. Right? We're not like we cracked the code on that already. It's not like somebody's thinking you're gonna, be at a bodybuilding competition tomorrow because you've gotten a therapeutic dose of testosterone. All you're doing is
you can run the Boston Marathon next year.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be sub 2 hours, right? And that's the new benchmark, right? Just a crazy dude like's out there, like just trots across at 158, and change.
Well, no, and you're absolutely correct, and it's already happening. I mean, I rode with people in the cycling club I was in California that were state and national champions, and those dudes were using 100%.
Were they doing like testosterone therapy? Or were they like EPOs, like traditional like Tour de France, right?
Yes, and then some.
I mean, because think back, like when Lance Armstrong was at his apogee, right? And I remember watching. There was a little guy, Mario Santiz, a little Italian dude, little bald dude,
the bald-headed guy,
Mario Pantini, right? One year, and it's one of those things where he wasn't trying to be arrogant. He was trying to say, I'm going to win the Tour de France. I don't need to win this stage. And so he was going to let Mario Pantini cross first. And it was going up this massive hill. And Pantini prided himself on being a big hill guy. And Lance Armstrong went by him for a while. And then he kind of came back near him. And at the end, he basically turned around and waved him on to get the stage win. And everybody thought, oh, what great sportsmanship. Right? Mario Pantini's dead. He killed himself. Right? And people can speculate, but what psychological effect did it have on that guy? Right? But being able to do that. If you look at that sport in totality, who wasn't doing some sort of PD, however you define it, right? Some sort of performance enhancing. Right? So is it, let's the moral question, right? Is it all right because everyone's doing it and now it's a level playing field? Or is it still not okay because it's considered morally sketchy to do that? Where are we at on that?
I don't think it's morally sketchy.
I don't either, but I mean, everybody can argue it, right? It's like the whole thing with baseball players, right? Yeah. Well, if Roger Clemens is doing it and Bonds is doing it, they're on a level playing field. The problem is everybody wasn't doing it, right? It wasn't widely considered to be everybody doing it.
Well, and that was the problem, like that Lance, I think, really created was it was so disproportionate in how advanced the U.S. Postal Team had it because of the money.
Right.
That nobody could compete with it. Not that everybody wasn't doing it. I mean, at least the first 30 places were. You know what I mean?
Well, so if we go back even further into cycling, and this is a weird digression we're doing in the world of tech, is cycling stars of the 80s and early 90s. But Miguel Indurain, the Spanish guy, won it 7 times, or six or 7 times, right? And his resting heart rate was like 28, right? And his like the amount, like the liters of blood he could cycle through his heart to keep oxygenated was huge, right? Was he doing EPO? We don't know. Like nobody was really worried about it back then. It was like, wow, look at that. He's still an incredible athlete, right? And he physically was different, right? Because his heart was tuned to at a slower rate, pump more blood, right? Was there advanced chemistry going on there or biology? I don't know. But was he still a great athlete? Absolutely. Right. And I mean, Dan, you can speak more to baseball and like because that a lot at the minor leagues, right? These guys want to get these big contracts. So they go out and they load up and they pile drive balls into the next county. And then next thing you know, they're in the big leagues and all they need is one big contract. Right. They don't need 3 like A-Rod or anything like that. Just one will change your life. So yeah, what's the morality in that? And what do you say? Hey, I'm not going to do that because I want to feed my family, right? Or vice versa.
It's interesting because I've gone back and forth, and I kind of look at it as how much different is it now than when people first started using things like creatine and all of these protein powders in order to build muscle. It's still artificial in a way. You're not. I mean, come on. If you watched the documentary about how like Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these athletes are turning a little bit vegan, I mean, this dude was eating something like 400 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
And that's why he weighed something like 250 pounds of muscle. How much different is it really? You're still in baseball. You still have to hit a round ball with a round bat coming at you 95 plus miles an hour. Yeah, you might be able to hit the ball a little bit further, but it's not going to change those fast twitch muscles for speed, eye contact. It's not going to do it. You still have to have natural ability.
check this out. Give me a second. Let me set up this analogy, and you guys tell me what you think. So I'll never forget watching a documentary on Lance, and he's doing a reconnaissance ride up the Alps, okay? And he must have ridden like 70 kilometers, gets to a point where he can't go anymore because it's snowed in. And so he tells the team car, listen, you guys wait here. I'm going to go back down and then ride back up another 70, which is, 140 kilometers total. And then we'll go home since I can't go the rest of the way up this mountain. That's pure mental effort. That has nothing to do with any kind of enhancement whatsoever. Like TK said, the only thing that the TRT, the EPO, all the other pharmaceuticals do is allow him to get up and do it again tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's all it does, right?
And that's, and I personally think the Baseball Writers of America are the most sanctimonious group of adults on planet effing Earth.
Yeah.
Right? You ever see the movie 60 where they're talking about, when Babe Ruth's home run record was, and you got all the Yankees there, and one of the big statements is like, will somebody please just bury that fat guy? Right? Talking about Babe Ruth. And when you get, we called runs batted in RBIs my whole life, and then all of a sudden the grammar police showed up, and now it's RBI. You got there. Yes, I get it. It's incorrect grammar, but when nothing's important, everything becomes a big deal, right? Yeah. And now that it's, hey, if we have I think the next thing is like when you talk about balls and strikes, right? We have this magical view of the history of baseball and this very romanticized piece of it. And in sports today, if you can get it right with technology, get it right with technology, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll even go so far as to say, hey, this ump back there is known as having a big strike zone. So make that box a little bit bigger. If you're going to say that it's, everybody knows that the strike zone is supposed to be from A to B and 17 inches wide, right? Well, live with that. Right, and if we've got it in us now to where less than a minute, like, it's going to extend the game and everything. If you have the ability to get it right in any endeavor, get it right and use technology to do it.
Well, but there's a beauty in the imperfection, right? The human error is a part of any of the games. Is the way I look at it.
But don't be hypocritical about it. If you're going to say, hey, we want to keep technology out of the game, right? And then why do you want technology in the game? Because billions of dollars are at stake in every sport, right? Mm-hmm. And coaches, livelihoods are at stake, right? If you look at last year, and it was who went to the Rams versus New Orleans Saints. Dude, basically, it wasn't pass interference. It was a mugging while the ball was still in the air. Right? The dude playing flat on his back on the sideline, and then the ball showed up, right? And Mr. Magoo missed it in the backfield, right? But they were like, we can't do that because it's just we get the game. Well, that could have cost a coach's job. That could have cost a player another contract, right?
Potentially, never leave it in the ref's hands.
Well, okay,
but that's what you're advocating for. It's like because they left.
I'm not. I'm advocating for no instant replay at all. I don't like instant replay. I think it's hey, it's the calls on the field. It's a sport that should have a human element to it. I don't want it. That's me.
Well, wait. So let me finish this.
I don't disagree with you. I'm getting out there for a point of argument, right? You can get it, and you can get every call correct, but at what cost? Is a baseball? People bitch already. Baseball games are too long. It's an old person's sport now. Kids don't watch it. Right.
So finish this analogy. Check this out. What happens pretty soon when we get tech doping? And what I mean by this, let me set this up. So I don't know if you guys remember, but I joined Freemasonry and I've finished all my degrees now, right? And so I've been having this conversation with some people because everything that's a secret, let's say, is only mouth to ear. It's not written down, cannot be written down. And so you have to learn it by having somebody speak it to you, and you have to memorize it, okay? So if you want to get really good at memorizing stuff, there's certain things you can do to, let's say, dope. And some of that is pharmaceutical and some of it is just memory technique. Okay. So that's like the equivalent of what we have now. There's people that I know that have been going through what I went through that don't know how to memorize information. And so they struggle. There's people like me that know how to memorize information and maybe take some pharmaceuticals to help them keep their memory tight. And they do, let's say, better relative. What happens when I have tech augmentation such that my memory now is offloaded to some embedded technology. We're not that far away from that. So what does it do to the spirit of those secrets, right? Just like what happens when I don't need TRT or EPO because I have nanites in me. Are you going to tell professional athletes in the 22nd century that they can't have nanites that make them immortal?
I don't. I mean, other than people go mental, right? You know, it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. It's the bodybuilding thing, right? If taking this much testosterone is good, taking 6 times more than that must be better, right? And at some point,
you're Lyle Alzado.
Yeah, you got to be safe from yourself, right? And I think one of the things, especially with performance enhancing drugs, is take it out of the shadows and put it into a doctor's office.
Yeah, right? I totally agree.
And legitimize it and say, look, we got, look at football right now. If you look at even back in the mid 80s, offensive linemen were massive fat dudes, right? Because they were just there to take up space. Now they're big dudes, but they're not. I mean, some of them have a little guts, but they're not. Who was a guy for the Dallas Cowboys? Nate Newton, voted the worst body in the NFL like 10 years in a row. He's subsequent to retiring has had the lap band surgery or whatever it is, and he's down 150 pounds. Why? Because you can't support that. These guys are bigger, better, faster with muscle, and same with defensive linemen. I mean, now you're looking at 280, 300-pound defensive ends running at people. It's like getting hit with a truck. Like at what?
Yeah, because they're like at 12% body fat or something ridiculous.
Right, and they're and if you look at, I would say, and not having really analyzed it extensively, there's that whole list of things that they can consume, right? But those things are about now, I would say, getting shredded, right? And becoming hard, but fast, right? And the size of the field hasn't changed. And so you're now taking bigger, better, faster athletes and putting them in the same size field. And what we've done is we've legislated out some of the violence, which I'm not advocating that we change that, because you had to, right? You're taking dudes that used to work out 3 or 4 months a year back when Butkus played and before, and they were just mean dudes, right? Right. So but if you look at Butkus, he doesn't look that big. He's not a big dude, right? Even now, like Lawrence Taylor's a big, tall dude, but he was a mean dude, right? That had some weightlifting, some thing, but you're talking now, because of the money, you're talking year-round science that these dudes, I mean,
they've got personal chefs, like all the time, and when they're going to eat, what they're going to eat,
right?
I mean, everything down to when they're going to sleep, for how long,
right?
It's you're right. I mean, it's not just year long. It's a 24/7, 365
right
job now.
How much money, for example, has Drew Brees made in his career? A lot. And it behooves him to do that, right? Tom Brady. I mean, you look at all the athletes, because the average career of an athlete of a football player is about 3 years, about 2, 3 little on either side of 3 years, depending on what position you're at. And in order to get retirement benefits from the NFL, it's kind of like Social Security. Like when Social Security was enacted, they said you had to get to 65. Well, the average age was about 60 at the time. So they were planning on a good portion of all you people are going to put into this, but we're only going to have to take a certain amount. Well, the average lifespan or average NFL career is about 3.5 years, and you've got to be in the NFL 5 years to get retirement benefits, right? But now it's just the cash.
Right.
Right. And, there's a kid.
Tom Brady's like, is he 40 or 41 right now? I don't know. But
is that Brady?
Yeah.
41?
Yeah. I mean, it's insane that to think about that, how he is still performing at 41 years old. And he doesn't appear to be slowing down that much to me.
Right. Especially when half his offensive line is decimated this year, and he's managed not to get brutalized just by, years of getting rid of the ball. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, and there's a certain amount of luck, because like Manning could still be playing, except for the fact he got a neck injury that becomes a neurological thing. Yeah. Right. And that, he lost arm strength. He lost a bunch of other things, so he just wasn't as fortunate. And when I say it's on a scale, because he still threw for over 50,000 yards, he's, I don't know how quickly we can get him to the Hall of Fame, but he's going to walk in the Hall of Fame as early as convenient.
When he retired, he held every passing record out
That's
there.
what I'm saying. But he at the end of his career, which I think is, the kind of like Zen master type stuff, is he found a way to keep winning, not in the same way that he started his career. And I think when you start talking about all of these long-term athletes, you look back like into the 80s, and I don't know the exact time frame, but there's an offensive lineman for the Rams back in the day. His name is Jackie Slater. He played 20 seasons as a lineman. One of the older Matthews, not the current generation of Matthews kids that are all in the NFL, but their parents played 18 seasons as a lineman, right? And that's not linemen today. That's when they're hitting each other twice a day in practice and everything like that. That to me is completely impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, even Marino playing 17 years in the NFL. I mean, the quarterbacks were allowed to be brutalized, just picked up and chucked on the ground back in the day, right? And I think that when people get up in arms about what you can or can't do, and the records are changing, we got to put asterisks. It's like, no, we used to sail ships, then we put steam engines in them, and now we put gas turbines and we put nuclear power in them. We're on a glide slope of exploration as humans, and we find a better way to do something. We traditionally try to do it, right? And nostalgia, in particular, to run it back to baseball, holds us back a lot because we're like, okay, what do we want out of it? And there's so much argument about it, but in my mind, when you get the talking heads in baseball, to me, just get so petulant. There's 2 or 3 of them that really have a good feel for history. I think like Tim Kurchin is one. I think he cracks me up. I think he's a great voice in baseball. And I think now that they're getting more baseball players, not just as game analysts, but they're actually part of the talking head culture, I think it kind of tends to do that. But you remember years ago, I think it was probably 5 years ago now, Dan Le Batard is one of the ESPN guys. He's a talking head, but he was a baseball writer for the Miami Herald forever, and he had a Hall of Fame vote. And he basically put out on social media under a pseudonym but here's the thing. This is in baseball law. Baseball writers collectively lost their ever-loving minds. The ballot that was kind of crowdsourced, ballot, right? And we still, as baseball fans, the unwashed masses that go watch the game can't possibly pick who the Hall of Famers are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Curt Schilling, I believe right now, with some of the metrics, is being held out of the Hall of Fame because of his political views.
Yeah, I would agree.
He is. I mean, you look at one side like an arch liberal, and oh my goodness, his name just spaced me. Boston guy. I'll think of it in a minute. But he basically is like, yeah, I'm not voting for him. Right now, again, Ty Cobb wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame under what the rule today. I mean, that dude was cleats up every time he went into second base, and if he didn't get it, he'd stand up and punch it. And he was an anti-Semite, right? And everything else.
He's the true definition of, he can't be a racist because he hated everyone equally.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah.
But did you realize professional boxing?
Yeah.
That's what I thought, Ty Cobb.
If you look, you're thinking of Randall Tex Cobb. I'm talking Ty Cobb back in the 20s and 30s and 1920s and 30s in baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Randall Tex Cobb was his own. Awesome. But you look at a lot of those players, think about this. And this is, so if you look in the 40s, we integrated baseball, right? 40s and 50s. And the concept of who's first, like everybody knows who Jackie Robinson is, but about 9 weeks after he started playing for the Giants, Larry Doby started playing for the Cleveland Indians in the AFC. And people very rarely know that. I was watching a show, and it was on one of the MLB channels, and it was about the old Negro Leagues. And what I took away from it is, while I think, as humans, we largely had to say, hey, people are people, and let's figure this out and bring all of that together. It was one of the African American, big writers was talking about one of the things like in the 50s and 60s that everybody in the Black community lamented was the death of all the owners of all, of all the Negro League teams, right? That they just died off. And it was this thriving business that, you know, you had entrepreneurs and they were baseball owners and other things. And there was all these other businesses, you know, typical is in the MLB that supported that. And that all died off, and you lost a big piece of entrepreneurship at a time before one segment of our population could achieve the full franchise of what the Constitution and what Americans, what we say we are, right? And, you know, and it's like, it's under that heading of, hey, nothing's all good or nothing's all bad, right? You have to think about the ramifications of your actions, and you couldn't see that today, but you can see that then, but you look back 60 years and you're like, hey, here's what really happened in full, you know, kind of in full retrospect.
Well, you know, that it's interesting because it kind of takes. Go ahead.
I would say, and now we have to contend with men getting, you know, their sexual orientation changed and then going back and competing in women's sports.
Breathe.
But that's what we have.
Not where I was going to go with it.
I know. I know you were.
But that's how it's that's how everything is transcended to where we've got all these things going on, and now we have men that are competing in women's sports.
Oh, no doubt. Right, and you look at it like wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, how is that a level playing field? I mean, the muscle makeup. I mean, there's just no way that I think that should even be close to being allowed.
Well, how close do you think we are to having? If you say, hey, if you're going to allow that, then every player that plays a professional sport should be allowed to do whatever it is with performance-enhancing drugs to achieve the greatest result humanly possible, right? And then bookend those two things, and let's start the discussion.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? I you know, honestly, and I'm not saying we agree with anything or agree with everything, right? But if you say, hey, on one end, you're saying, hey, it's perfectly, we're legislating, right? Because that's really what's happening is people are going to court to say, hey, Tommy, who's now Tabitha, wants to go wrestle, right? And so if we say that, and we're going to say that's okay because we're legislating that, whether we agree with it or not, right? Whether whoever's in the audience there, whether you agree with it or not, we've legislated to a certain extent that that's okay in certain parts of the country because they're just finding sympathetic judges to say, yeah, you got to do that. On the other hand, we've got, you know, the chattering class of the professional baseball writers saying, hey, you know, you can't do any of this, up to and including taking amphetamine, you know, some low level, you know, having what's ever seen that in a Monster Energy drink before a game? Because that goes back to what used to happen with, you know, low grade amphetamine, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So if we're going to say that's okay, then let's, for argument's sake, say, hey, it's a free for all. People can do what they want. Let's start the discussion with that. What we're going to do is we're going to do the easy thing and say, hey, we're going to make a big long list of substances that you can't take, but we're going to avoid the elephant in the room because that's a hard discussion, right? I mean, look at the NCAA. There's a kid that plays for Memphis or wants to play for the University of Memphis. Penny Hardaway is now the head coach of the University of Memphis. And one of these days we'll have a great discussion about how he got that job and why it's important, where he started from after his NBA career and how he got there. And it's a great story. There was a kid that he basically said, hey, I'm going to move you from where you're at to be closer to me to play high school and AAU basketball. At no time was he considering being the coach of Memphis. Well, he became the coach of Memphis, and then this kid, he recruited him to play at Memphis. He got treated like a booster, and that kid's getting suspended for a certain part of the season. And it wasn't about what he did; it was about a dollar amount. How much was it? Well, we're equating wrong, like the scale of being wrong. With
it's either wrong or it's not, regardless if it's $1 or $1 million.
And I think, and it's a crazy thing, right? Because if you look at, there's a kid for Ohio State. He's probably going to be the number one player taken in the NFL draft this year. He got suspended for 2 games. Again, it was the dollar amount, right? That guaranteed the 2 games, right? They tried more, and they said, no, the case history is it's only this. And I don't think this kid did anything wrong. He borrowed money from a friend, a family friend, a long time. It's not like, hey, this dude just showed up out of nowhere and he's a boost, works for a shoe company or something like that. He's a longtime family friend. He borrowed money so that he could afford to have his girlfriend, significant other, come out to the Rose Bowl and watch him play in the Rose Bowl. He paid the money back, right? How many, and no, we can't have him on the field. Yeah, no, he did. That was part of the discussion. He paid the money back.
Yeah,
right?
from a different take, maybe.
We're not, but this is that, like the NCAA is scrambling now to try to protect their franchise because it's a, and it's funny because everybody.
Do you think it has a lot to do with what's going on in the California legislature?
I think that that's speeding it up, right? This concept of, and I was like, there's a Jay Billis who played at Duke and he's a big ESPN announcer. Every time one of these things where they're, Alabama's remodeling and they're adding a number, all these suites, founders suites that are going to go for $5 million. I think it's like, if only there was enough money, right, to do this, right? And that's, the NCAA has created a cartel, right? And in order to play college sports, right, they're considered to be a nonprofit. Like for now, Jorah had to register with the NCAA portal, right? And this piece I think is good because what it does is it creates a unified clearinghouse for academics, right? That she has to take, 4 maths, 4 sciences, 4 English, and 4 social sciences. And those are the only 16 courses that her GPA is going to be computed on for whether she's eligible or not, right? And so a lot of, these kids in high school, they'll take entrepreneurship and all these, while they're useful and cool courses to take and it's knowledge, they don't count for the portal, right? And so they create, and there's a special code now when she takes the SATs that she has to put so it automatically goes there. So there's no gerrymandering in that. And I think that piece of it's really good, right? But what they've done, as you've seen, like in the 60s and 70s, they made teams not have contracts for television, right? And they've controlled the flow of media. Well, what that did, if you look in the 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s, was it guaranteed that 10 programs in the U.S. would have all the best athletes because they were the ones that were on television all the time. And they could say, hey, if you come play with us, you're going to be on television. Why are teams that were in the second and third tier now called Power 5 schools? Because everyone has access to being on television, access to being in the media. And that more than anything is skewed because with that wide-ranging SEC channel, ACC channel, Big Ten channel, there's been so much money poured into the sport that now there's this argument of what do we pay the players, right? And my thing is, for the most part, football at all the big schools, football pays for all the other sports and libraries and everything else, right? But people don't want to hear that anymore. And that's okay, right? Because there's still enough money to go around, right? And Title IX has done a lot of great things, but you've also got like men's gymnastics is falling off because we've got to be compliant with Title IX. So when we start talking about sports and athletes and performance enhancing and everything else, it starts way earlier. Baseball, you got 14-year-olds having preemptive Tommy John surgery. Yeah. Right? As a parent, I would be like, are you like, you should have your parent card taken away. If you're not injured, but we're going to go preemptively cut you open and do something to you because we think it might help you throw a curveball when you're 18 years old. It baffles me.
Yeah, that's pretty staggering. Well, but this is the thing. It goes back to where we started. This is what I was going to say a little earlier. It's about decision-making in the moment with a long-lasting impact based on the momentum it creates. Right? No, yeah. What are you practicing? And so, Lance Armstrong was not the first guy to dope. From the very get-go, those dudes were drinking beers. This is a true story. They would drink beers to numb their legs, and they smoked cigarettes because they thought it opened up their lungs.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yep.
And they would attack these giant mountains on these old shitty bicycles, and they were just trying to get an edge on competition, right? You can
everything with a basket of bell on them, right?
Yeah, right. And they would carry the spare tubes around them like bandoliers.
Yeah, no.
But that's just the nature of competition, right?
Yep.
And so
everyone's always looking for that edge.
Yeah. So let's recognize it, put it on the table, as you guys were saying, and let's make some intelligent, long-lasting, positive momentum decisions about it. So you don't get caught into these extremes. Just like politics, right? It's the extremes that are destructive, and especially swinging back and forth like a pendulum.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. I would totally agree with that. You know.
Well, but I still don't think college athletes should get paid.
It's a perfect. It's like I said. I don't get mad about it. Like it's again, but we're not willing to engage in an honest discussion about it because I'll say it like this. Athletics, even I was at a charity basketball tournament yesterday, and it's largely third graders through eighth graders playing basketball, and it's an annual thing. And we all go support it. It's to raise money for I think brain cancer. It's one of the benefactors of Catholic basketball in our area passed away and died of cancer. And so we have a tournament every year, and it's a lot of fun. And the coach that runs it was one of Jorah's coaches when she was younger and was instrumental in her development. And we want to go support it, right? Mm-hmm. And I was talking to one of the dads that he's one of the participants in how the league is managed, right? And it's always it's crazy to me with parents, right? You've got some schools where this happens everywhere in America, where a parent wants to be the athletic director or run the basketball piece, even for third and fourth graders, because they want to make sure their kids get the preferred practice times and all this other stuff, right? And as soon as their kid's done, they leave, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you have younger kids at the school, if their kid's not a participant in that sport, they forget about it. And you've got parents of third graders. Like the first opportunity where you can play basketball is third grade, right? You've got, they calling this coach up calling the director of basketball up on a Monday going, I was watching my kid play this week, and I think he'd be better suited playing with fifth graders because, we don't want to hold him back. Right.
Right.
Great. But if you play him now with the fifth graders, he won't be playing when he's a seventh and eighth grader because there's rules about when you can play. More importantly, if you think that, go have your child play AAU. Mm-hmm. Right. There was like on Twitter, you can do polls. Mm-hmm. Ask questions. There was questions like, what is the number one delimiter for talented athletes not getting scholarships to college? There was grades, something else, and then parental, bad parenting, right? Or adverse parenting, right? And that was, nobody picked that. They all picked bad grades. And actually being that parent is the number one thing, right? One of Jorah's friends is a year older than her, is going through the recruiting process, and her mom's sitting at a game. And knowing that there's coaches there, after the game, coach comes up and says, "Hey, we really enjoyed your daughter playing," and like that. And oh, by the way, I'd like you to meet my assistant coach. And that assistant coach was just sitting next to her the entire game. Because if you're a parent that's screaming and yelling at your kids, effectively coaching your kids, or more importantly, you're in the stands and while the game is going on, you might not be doing it for public to think, but you're talking to your spouse or friends that are there, and you're basically disparaging the coaches, and because they just don't understand your kid, right? Like when Jorah, I talk about effort, right? I mean, I'm not a basketball coach, but you know what? I know effort when I see it, right? And even now, it's like since she was a little kid, when she was a little bit younger, was I the best at that? Nope, because I didn't know how to channel. Well, I wasn't good at channeling what I wanted to see from effort, right? And so now, but I went back to the basics of when she was in third grade. As soon as she comes off the court, hey, did you have fun? Right, and then we start from there. And to watch, even yesterday, to be there and see, she had her first game on Friday night, and just listening to the JV parents from two other teams before the game was appalling, right? It baffles me, right? And it's like picking on the refs. Even yesterday, like one of the parents was screaming at the refs. I go, look, this is a charity tournament. All these refs donated their time. Most of them are newer refs because they want time to learn. And you've got experienced refs out there coaching the refs, right? And it's a great scene. None of the games count towards a record for a tournament play or anything like that. It's just a bunch of teams getting out there, like getting kids experience, and we raise money for cancer. Why do you have to yell from the stands?
Yeah, I think I've said this before. Like when my stepson would play, there was always a tournament. There was like basically scrimmages, right? Mm-hmm. And part of that was when they were training the new crop of refs. Yeah. And you knew it was going on. It was clear as day.
Right.
And parents would be yelling at these refs and yelling at kids. And I would So my kind of thing is, I just like the mechanics of sport. So I just sit there quietly and I watch and I think about, how do you run? How do you jump? Why do you do? I'm just quiet. And if I clap for good performance or effort across the board. I don't care who it is.
Right.
And so I would turn to my wife and I still think this, like, can you imagine being that dude or that chick that yells at the ref that's getting trained? And what do you say the next morning when you're brushing your teeth? I really got that fucker. You know what I mean?
But throughout the years, most recently this Friday, most recently 48 hours ago, I'm sitting next to some parents that are obviously rooting for the other team. There's a whole long discussion they were having I found appalling about just education in general. But when our girls were getting up to the free throw line, the guy was sitting there literally with his hands like this going, Jinx, Jinx, Jinx. Like, first off, the kids don't feel it. Right? And it goes back, I was reminded, because when Jorah was like 10, I think it was third or fourth grade, and she's on the free throw line, and I'm videoing the game, right? Just for the coach's benefit, I'm videoing the whole game, right? And she's standing up there, and the guy sitting next to me, a la Caddyshack, right when she goes to shoot, goes, Noonan, right? And I'm like, you just Noonan a 10-year-old. Like, how do you feel about yourself right now? Like, you just, like, what is wrong with you? Right? She'll have a chance to be getting, the vuvuzelas and all those things you bang if she goes and plays in college.
Right.
Right. But even in high school games, teams, the spectators are pretty respectful of watching the game. Right? They're kids. Nobody's making any money off it. Right? I mean, it is like, watch these kids be athletes, good or bad. Like, they're gonna do great things, they're gonna make some mistakes. Celebrate all of it. Right? As long as you're not being stupid out there or malicious towards other players, like, celebrate your kids or the kids in, being out there having a great time, right? Because there's also the other thing where there are parents who will sit there and they only will say positive things they might not say anything negative, but they'll only say positive things if it's their child on the court.
That's right. Right.
Or on the field or whatever.
It's a big reason why, I don't remember how many years ago it was now, but it's a big reason why I stopped umpiring. I mean, you didn't make any money umpiring. Now, it was good money for me when I was 16. I was making, $20 a game. I do 2 during the week, and I would umpire on, Sundays because I was playing ball on Saturday. So, I had 3 games I would do on Sunday. So I'm like, hey, make $60. It's all cash. But later I just did it because I enjoyed being out there with all the kids and being able to help. Well, the moment that I stopped doing it was a coach started arguing a call that, one, he was completely incorrect, but it was in his favor. I'm like, he's like, oh, he was safe. I'm like, yeah, he was. And he just kept arguing about it.
I got it.
I'm like, all right, look, if you say one more word, I'm gonna have to throw you out because you're now disrupting. Then I threw him out, and then he wouldn't leave the field. So I called the game and I said, "That's it, I'm done. Game's over. You wouldn't leave the field. You were just being disruptive, and I'm out." And then I said, "I'm never umpiring again." And that was probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to, especially when I go, I know how this game is supposed to be. I know what it is, and you're here. I'm basically volunteering. Like, I would rush home from DC, going into Annapolis, Maryland, so I can umpire a game, for $20. It basically
for gas money. Right? Yeah.
Because I wanted to.
One of the coolest things, and I'm sure it still exists, I just don't usually watch the 3rd and 4th graders play. In order to get through a 3rd and 4th grade basketball game, the refs have to make certain allowances, right? Because if you called every single extra step, or the game would still be going on, and Jorah would still be in 3rd grade. But most of the refs that really enjoy it, right? Because some of the refs want to coach the older kids, right? But the refs that really enjoy it are as much educators as they are. They're coaching the kids up on the court as well, and it's it's one of those heartwarming things to see, because for the most part, all the parents have good intent. They want to get their kids out there, even if it's for no other reason than to be part of a team, right? Mm-hmm. And the coaches, for the most part, are volunteers that want to, they want to help their kids and other kids be better, and they like the sport, and they want to, kind of give their love of the sport to somebody else. And then you add the refs in there and they're helping out. It's a perfect hour of your life to go just hang out.
It is. Well, particularly when you juxtapose it against our closest animal relative, the chimpanzee, would be absolutely ripping each other apart if they were in that close proximity with another tribe
exactly.
of chimps.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we're able to negotiate this social contract where we're going to sit down and abide by these rules. And somehow, sometimes you get this abhorrent behavior, though, where somebody decides they're not going to abide by those social contract rules, and they're going to yell at people. And then, what is wrong with you? Like we were saying, yeah, you really got that 10-year-old. You fucking taught him.
Yeah, you're the reason we can't have my jackass. That's literally what you're going to say, right?
Right.
Dora was, this goes back, she was probably in 5th or 6th grade, and one of the parents was like, knock number 3 on her butt. And everybody knew who number 3 was, and I looked up in the stands because I typically at that point was standing a lot, and I go, if number 3 gets breathed on the wrong way, we're going to have a different discussion. That's a 10 or 11-year-old you're out there advocating violence against, dude, in a Catholic school league game on a Sunday afternoon. Right? I mean,
that's the best.
The irony is just so amazing, right?
Yeah, but you're right. We were at a basketball game one time for my stepson, and I'm sitting there, and this was like in a small gym, so you're sitting like right on the out of bounds line, right? There's no bleachers; they're just folding chairs.
Yep.
And there was a foul like right in front of us, and the dude beside me is a parent on the other team, and whatever, right? And he yells at the ref as the ref is running by because there's a turnover, and they're running down the other length of the field, and the ref actually stops the game, and this was beautiful, and explains to this dude that he didn't call the foul, like you were saying, because it was in his team's favor,
right?
And the guy was probably going to go down there and have a layup and score, and if I had stopped the game and prevented that from happening, you'd be yelling at me because of that. So what do you want me to do?
Well, I mean, they're having a hard time now in all sports getting competent officials, right? Because it's like, why, it's all the time. It's like, you want to go, it's like at a middle school AAU tournament. Those guys are making $25-$50 a game. It's like, hey, you're getting the best guy you can get for that. He loves the sport. He's not out there for money. And is he perfect? And especially when you talk about the little kids, hey, if these refs could ref at a league, at a league higher than they are, they probably would. Right? There's a couple refs. I mean, I've spent a lot of time working the table, especially in AAU. I spent a lot of time on the clock or doing the bar. And a lot of these refs, they get really abusive. They'll get abusive to people on the table. And I told one lady one time, I go, hey, me and this person don't have to be here. You want to keep talking to us like this, I'll get up and leave. Right? That's your fault. And I'll make sure everybody knows, right, that it's your fault on the way out, right? And that goes back, I think we've talked about the Starbucks thing, right? People having control of their life, right? That's the place where that person finds control of their life. Are you doing this because you love the game of basketball, or are you doing this because you can feel like you're in charge for 45 minutes to an hour?
Well, see, and I think we agree that should be the point for the kids, actually.
Correct.
They should be learning these social rules of how you get along with people that you don't know. Right? Are you going to see them again? And if not, maybe there's no consequence really immediately to your behavior. But if you think long term, I had people that I played sports against in the next city over that I never saw unless I played sports against them. But they ended up being in the dorm room next to me in undergrad.
Right.
And now I lived with them. You know what I mean?
That's a great analogy in that, in any type of negotiations.
Yeah.
When you happen to believe you're never going to see the person again, you negotiate completely differently than when you know that you may have to come across this person again.
Right.
And so we do this all the time. If we act as if we will see this person again, because it's really what people don't truly understand is that your reputation in negotiations or sports or anything like that will transcend beyond just that initial meeting. Yep. Because someone's going to say what their experience was with you. And then that is what someone else is eventually going to hear. Oh, I had to negotiate with Dan Ford or Jason Pittman or TK Epley, and it was a good or bad. And you don't necessarily know about we hear about other people as well. I can tell you that, every time that I go, when I've gone for a job interview, something like that, I'm looking up and trying to find things about the other people's reputation. And
Yeah,
I think that's the big thing that I took with sports. And again, the reason why I stopped umpiring, because I just the reputation that parents were getting with me just was no longer worth my time, because I knew if I'm going to come here trying to help the kids and I'm going to be miserable while doing it, because I just can't. And that's what it came down to. I was miserable doing it. There was another time I had some 11, 12-year-old kid pitching. He was trying to throw a curveball. You don't want to throw a curveball that young. It's really bad for your arm. So, got into, basically an argument with the coach, because the coach was the father. I'm trying to teach him. It's like, well, then you should teach him how to throw a knuckle curve, because there's no breaking of the wrist.
Right.
And you'll get the same effect. That breaking of the wrist is going to hurt this kid. And I basically prevented the kid from pitching the rest of that day. I'm like, you're not going to do that while I'm umpiring, because this kid's going to hurt himself. And the father didn't care.
Right.
All those things. So and it's a shame, because the people that really want to help, they can't necessarily commit themselves to an entire season of coaching kids, but they can donate a couple of hours a week. So they'll ref or umpire. We're pushing them away. And then what's going to happen?
Oh, I know. I think, for me personally, because Jorah's been playing AAU for so long, there's such a wide group of people that we know, and it becomes even on other teams, like, because they know Jorah knows their daughter or whatever, that, you have this, it's more than acquaintance, but kind of less than true friends, right? Where you see them all the time and you always want to know how the kids were doing. You want to talk to them. And Jorah played out her first game of the season last Friday. And after the game, I was like, oh man, I got to go over and talk to Tyler's dad. Right. I haven't seen him in a while. Or when we see it, like there was a combine a couple months ago, and they got all the parents together to talk about the recruiting process, and they had a compliance officer from one of the local universities there for NCAA stuff. And who do I sit right next to? With Tyler's dad. Right. And it goes back to the fact that the girls have been around each other since they were 10, 11 years old. All right. I think it's somewhat different in business, Dan, because the result of a negotiation, the result of an interaction, right, is oftentimes that other person, if they felt they lost, or if they lost, it was not so, it wasn't a direct reflection of that negotiation, but something went wrong. People negotiate in their mind an outcome that doesn't make them the bad guy.
Sure.
Right. And so, if you hear, like, it's that concept, if I hear one person say, hey, this guy's a jackass, whatever, I don't care. Right. But if you go on and you go on to Glassdoor, and like every person, but again, you have to temper that with the baggage claim experience. Right. How many times have you gotten your luggage correctly on time at the carousel and walked in and said, hey, thanks for doing your job today. You did a really good job. People walk in and it's just like that poor baggage claim person's like, oh no, here we go again. Right.
Hey, I live this every day, being the head of IT. No one ever calls up and says, hey, thank you for keeping all the servers.
Yeah, exactly. But
they just call and complain.
Right. But if you think about that, I think it kind of tempers the negativity. Right. I'm not talking about you go there and like, oh man, this guy had like 4 lawsuits filed against him. I'm saying, we now, through Glassdoor or whatever it is, everybody can be anonymous and everybody can have an opinion about somebody. If I'll take the person's opinion if they put their name to it. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Especially if it's adverse, right? Because you're saying, hey, I believe strongly enough in what I feel that I'm willing to put my name against it. Right. But for the most part, if you go on any of these job hunting sites where you can look up a company and then talk about the CEO and stuff, it's all, you can say, I don't want this to be, former employee, current employee, or it can be current employee in engineering, right? Current employee in here, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you're intimate or you've worked at that company, you probably can figure out who's saying what based on how they say it, knowing the transactional history. But for the rest of the world, they don't know. They just see, hey, that guy's getting a bad rap. Well, you're a junior man and you just think the CEO made a bad decision. Well, he may have made a bad decision, but what information was he fed by everybody else in the company to help make that decision? All right.
Well,
sure.
And there's also real quick a dichotomy between a bad decision for me versus how that decision weighs in on the total body.
No doubt.
And those aren't always the same outcome.
Right. And most junior people, because they lack experience and context, always like, how does it affect me?
That's right. Sure.
Right.
Sure. And that's natural.
You know? Yeah.
That's natural. It just has to be taken account for.
And I've heard that once come out of a leader's mouth. It was unintended. I think that filter between his brain and his mouth got a thing. And like quietly, he thought it was to himself. He said, well, how does that affect me? We're trying to make a decision. And everybody stopped what they were doing and looked at him. And he was forever changed in our eyes. Right?
Sure.
It's just, everybody to a certain extent acts in their own self-interest, and nobody
It didn't change me that much.
No, it wasn't you, Dan.
Wow. The double depth joke there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, but that
people is it time for church yet, Dan? You need to go repent.
Pretty soon. Hey, as I keep saying, God doesn't want me, and Satan's not through with me yet.
Yeah. Grease up, get the e-ticket, get on the slide.
So you got it wrong, man. I'm just going to live forever.
We'll all be together.
Yeah.
We'll be doing the podcast from hell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You still have over 100 years on us, TK. So you might be there before us. So secure our spot properly.
Hey, I'm looking good for 155.
You are.
You are. Right.
This is why, for people that don't understand, this is why TK is such a big proponent for TRT and all this stuff. He's got all the best doctors out there.
It's funny because I contemplate doing that as a function of saying, hey, and again, you're talking therapeutic. It's like, why wouldn't you do that, right? I mean, the average.
I agree. I'd love to feel like I'm 25 again.
I don't know if the world's ready for that.
They're not even ready for me at 44.
Zoinks. But yeah, no, we are not. I'm going to speak for the collective. I'm going to speak for the other 6.9 billion people. No, we are not.
Oh.
Well, did we stuck to the topic we wanted to talk about before we started?
We never get to the topic that we want to talk about. Maybe one day we will.
Next week we're going to have to.
See, I would argue that we do. It's just not what we say.
Here's how we do it. Next week, as you start to advertise for the show on social media, Jason, advertise what we're going to talk about.
He tried that as well. It was like a month ago. He said we're going to talk about this week. We didn't talk about it.
I will promise you this. I will go into protest mode if we don't talk about it. I'll go into protest mode, and every time somebody tries to talk, I will overtalk them until we get onto the topic.
There we go. And we'll train ourselves to make better decisions.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Have a great week, everyone.
All right,
everybody.
have a good
Take
week.
care.
Yeah, bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.